I still love to do things with messy data and so on. So maybe that's one of the reasons I'm here with you today. Let's see well, maybe I will stick with this mic. But yes, so dream infrastructures for a social scientist would be my title today. So kind of recapping what I've been doing the past over 10 years, actually, on my table, working with something that I would call big social data, because it's usually not only social, but also big. And kind of like, well, I will get to that later, but I think there's a lot of like stuff that has been going on in this field during those 10 plus years, and it's still not kind of finished, and we have these constant developments like, I don't know, Krista mentioned GDPR, and we don't actually know if it exists next year anymore, so maybe we don't need to care about that stuff anymore. So it's a constantly developing field, and maybe that's part of the fun, actually. But yeah, so indeed, and this is not working now. Let's see. Maybe it will work. Yep. So yeah, I'm indeed Salla-Maria. I work as a senior researcher at the Center for Consumer Society Research on the other side of the Unionin-katu. But I also have kind of strings and attachments here and there. So I've been doing some collaboration with the digital humanities people on this side, and also with many other universities, and also working quite a lot with computer scientists and like people who really know how to do this stuff. I'm trying myself as well, but I have to say that I'm definitely not a computer scientist. So there are definitely people in the room who are much better on that field than what I am. But I think kind of where my sort of journey on this field started was maybe somewhere, actually it was even before 2015, but Digivaalit 2015, digital elections 2015 was probably one of the first social science projects that started using, for example, CSC servers and working with like big data methods, as we used the term at that time. But we actually did some work with the presidential elections in 2012 already before that. And this is kind of an interesting trajectory overall with the projects, because in 2012, we had basically full access to whatever was going on Facebook. And we got like data that we definitely should not have received through the APIs, what they had at that time, like including personal relationships between people who were commenting on like Niinistö's Facebook page or whatever. So a lot of stuff that is definitely not GDPR compliant, but it was completely available at that time. And now we work in a quite different kind of environment with the current projects that I'm running at the moment, but still actually working with social media data and trying to kind of figure out the ways how to kind of ethically and reasonably get access to that data and also kind of use it to actually answer social scientifically relevant projects. But one kind of aspect of my work has been always about mixed methods. So when I do work with social media data, it's kind of really, really rarely just computational methods or just quantitative methods or even just qualitative methods, but like different kinds of combinations of those. So typically when you work with big social media data, you kind of end up with having quite a lot of that data, and then you need some methods on kind of how to get yourself into those interesting parts in that data, like how to somehow filter the data that you can actually do something more with that. And in most of the projects that I've been in, we've really had this combination of like more or less computational people, and then people who are kind of really in the other end, kind of just doing qualitative methods and who are really, really good experts in that. And that has been kind of the fun and struggle in my work, usually, how to actually build these meaningful pipelines and kind of find the tools how to actually make it work so that everyone in the group still knows what we are actually doing as a team as well. And yeah, here on the right-hand side, there are a couple of examples of my own work where we have been combining computational methods with, we have like network analysis, we have some machine learning methods, but then we also have qualitative methods, network analysis, online ethnography even. So these combinations can be even quite wild sometimes. And maybe one cool term that I found a couple of years back is actually something that is called computational hermeneutics. So maybe I would actually adopt that and say that's something what I'm doing quite often. So kind of employing different kinds of methods and their combinations to make sense of the data and the phenomenon that I'm looking at the very moment. So that's maybe something we can keep in mind during the presentation as well. But in these kind of projects and kind of in my work overall, I must say that today I'm actually not alone with my dreams and thoughts here, but maybe a community that many of you know that I'd like to kind of raise at this point as well is Rajapinta, the Scientific Association for Digital Social Sciences. And when I was preparing for this talk, I actually went back to a workshop that we had back in 2018 together with CSC and some analytics companies, where the point was to kind of fulfill this dream, or at least dream the dream, research infrastructure for digital social sciences. So there's a lot of stuff that other people have also been thinking about during the past almost 10 years indeed. And there are some quite nice points that I found in those like flapboards that we made back in 2018 actually, and happy to share more about those insights as well in other occasions. But the challenge is that we maybe identified in that workshop as well, and what I also encounter in my work all the time, when you work in these kind of diverse groups where you have people with different kinds of expertise. We have qualitatively oriented scholars who cannot do usually anything with the large data sets. They might be able to use Excel, but that might be that's about it. And that's, I mean, Excel is a powerful tool. I want to mention that as well. But like they might struggle in kind of following what is actually going on with the computational methods. What are the workflows? What are actually the possibilities even that you can do with the data? You might just kind of get overwhelmed with that data. But then also we have the computationally oriented scholars who are very much unaware of the needs and skills of the qualitative researchers. Often they are very good at generating pipelines and producing output. But at the same time, they don't always have the skills to kind of understand what all the choices that they make on the way and how they actually affect what you end up having on the table for the qualitative researcher, for example, or what you kind of accidentally end up filtering away from your data or kind of making things look something else what they don't necessarily are. So we're working in a hybrid team, and often what that team then kind of struggles with is that we cannot really formulate the research question together because we don't understand what the kind of the other people in the team know and what are their strengths and maybe what they are even interested in. And that's why these kind of projects are always, as I said, they're really fun, but they're also quite messy. And it might take a long time to kind of figure out what are we actually doing as a team. So I would say generally what we need is something that I would call methodological imagination for big social data. So more understanding about the things that we do with our different mindsets and our skill sets. But maybe the question for today, could we also have infrastructures that would actually support this kind of work? So some thoughts on that in the following slides. First point that I would like to raise, I think these digital infrastructures for research methods should definitely serve people with varying backgrounds, which is not necessarily the case at the moment. And here, this is kind of based on the workshop stuff that we did back in 2018, going through different projects, existing projects, and kind of figuring out what kinds of tools we actually used, but also what kinds of skills we had, and what would be the dream infrastructure that we would need to actually make those flows work better. So infrastructure, if it would be kind of accessible for these hybrid multidisciplinary teams, it should allow people with limited technical skills to use it as well. It should be flexible enough for different data types and analytical needs. This is maybe something that was reflected in Christer's talk as well. It should also employ methods that are somehow traceable and kind of open enough also for open science, which is also related to the question of reproducibility. So we should be able to know what has been done during the process and also repeat it if we want to kind of if someone wants to validate the results, or we want to kind of do the same study in another context. So this is actually a lot to wish for, right? But I would say that we kind of do have some tools that are sort of almost taking us there. I would like to highlight some of the more, would I say, social science friendly tools that have been developed by people in this room as well. I think Corp is a familiar tool for many, offered by the Language Bank of Finland. And they have been actually doing a lot of great development during the years, also kind of to serve other target groups beyond the original target group of like language research. And then you can do exports now that kind of allow you to do like keyword searches for the data sets that are there, and then actually filter the data as much as you need typically for a typical social science problem, I would say. I was also kind of told by Mietta actually last week that there's another version of Corp, or a friend of Corp coming maybe soon to us, which is called Mink. Gotta love these names, right? But they have it in Sweden already, with the idea that you could actually upload your own data to a setup that is close to Corp. And another tool like that would actually be Voyant. I don't know if that's familiar to people in the audience. But I think it's developed by French scholars, and basically a corpus linguistics tool that you can run on your browser and basically just use different language-based methods basically to explore your data set. So these are all pretty cool. But I mean, with these, you kind of immediately end up balancing between the aspect of usability and, on the other hand, flexibility. Meaning, for example, that on Corp, you can only use those data sets that are available there. And there's a lot of work taking place behind the scenes before a data set actually ends up in Corp, which is really great work that people here are doing. But then if you want to kind of use your own data set, you might go to Voyant, but it's a bit unclear where the data actually lives if you upload your data there. So I would be pretty careful if I had any personal data or any sensitive data. I would definitely not put it to Voyant. So this is kind of the question that you have to think about with the data sets. And then also the overall question of flexibility. If you have an existing tool, you can do the things that specific tool allows you to do, that someone designed for that tool. And for some purposes, it's enough, but quite often it's not. And then you have to start kind of doing your own workflows on top of that. Another really great set of tools, or a tool basically, that I would like to highlight here is something that is called 4CAT. This is developed by scholars at the University of Amsterdam. It's a data collection and analysis tool specifically designed for social media datasets. So you can actually use it to even extract some forms of data if you have your own like access key, for example, for Telegram. But what it does really nicely, that it has like a huge set of different kind of simple analytical tools that you can use to make sense of your data. What you can see here is an example of the recent presidential elections, of which we collected a lot of data, and we're actually currently trying to get that published to Corp as well. But some of the preliminary analysis that we kind of went through with that data were actually done with 4CAT. And for example, it shows you these clusterings of different image types that you have in the data, and quite even complex stuff. Kind of again with the balancing that you can only do those things that you have in that tool. And then if you want to do extra, you need to take your data out and to do something more. But this is an example of a tool and infrastructure that is actually pretty easily used by anyone. I had a student in my master's seminar at the moment who started collecting her own TikTok data and then installed the Docker and the 4CAT and was able to actually do the whole analysis using these tools without any coding background. So that's a great sign, I would say. And maybe here, if we talk about accessibility for all kinds of scholars, I guess we need to touch the burning question of the day, something that we will talk about later today as well. But we have the large language models and different generative AI tools. Are they accessible using these criteria that I was presenting earlier? They are definitely easy to use and accessible to anyone with no coding backgrounds, but they are at the same time very, very black boxed. And we have quite a lot of studies that are using them and are getting quite nice results. But at the same time, we have quite many worrying papers as well. For example, Mervala and Kousa, Ilona was also here in the audience, so I'm sure she's happy to say more about this study, but showed kind of when the context window ends with your large language model, you will end up in a lot of hallucinations with your data, to put it simply. And also this really great recent paper by Baumann and others, they replicated existing social science studies with data annotation tasks and basically showed that with little tweaks that you do for the prompt, you can make any of those studies produce significant results. And I think that's a really worrying sign for anyone who is using prompt-based tools to do their annotations. So what I would say, if you want to use these tools, I think they work better in combination with some existing infrastructure, and they seem like they are easy to use for anyone, but they also do require a lot of technical knowledge and kind of understanding of the mechanisms behind them. And this kind of prompt hacking phenomena is actually really, really worrying, that I would hope you will all keep in mind. But my second point, as I mentioned, I'm working typically in projects where we have people with varying backgrounds, and I really want to work with the data together. So infrastructure should also allow for this collaboration. How can we have people around that same data set at the same time, again, so that everyone would be able to follow somehow what we are doing with the data? Some confessions to start with. We have really, really few tools that actually allow you to do this. And quite often what we end up using is Google Sheets. And I know this is super problematic, and we have a really clear practice that we don't do it unless the data was already public. So it must be some kind of, if it's tweet data, or in this case, we're using the Stack Exchange platform, we're usually doing our annotations there if we have multiple scholars working on it. Because I haven't found any other proper kind of tool that would actually reliably allow us to work with the same data at the same time, so that we have people from different universities and also from different countries quite often. And I don't like it, but I'm really happy to hear any other solutions to kind of fix this problem that I'm living with in my daily life. Some other tools that we have been testing and trying with other types of data. This is an example of Label Studio that might be familiar to some here. An open source program that you can set up on your own laptop or on a server somewhere. And then here you can have multiple annotators working with the same data, but usually so that each of them works with their own kind of set of data, and then you can combine later the annotations. It's a really powerful platform also in the sense that you can do these kinds of LLM collaborations with that. So you can plug in different APIs, and you can also use it to fine tune LLMs for yourself. So actually a really, really great tool also for people who want to work with the large language models. And our version of this is running on a server at cPOTA on CSC. So again, we need some other infrastructure to actually make it work. And we are really happy to be based in Finland because we do have that possibility. Another example from some colleagues from Tampere. This is actually a tool built by Jukka Huhtamäki. They were working with a data set of 12 million, I think, 12 million tweets related to the Christchurch mosque attack. And with a kind of again, hybrid team of like computer scientists and ethnographers. And how do you get an ethnographer to actually understand something from a data set of 12 million tweets? Not an easy task, but then Jukka ended up building this kind of another sort of view and dashboard to their data that had also some network analysis representations, but then also the possibility where you can use the embedded original tweets kind of on that platform, and qualitative scholars can actually sort of browse through the data using this custom-made platform. The code is available actually in open source if you check the publication. But again, an example where you need a lot of technical work for this to actually happen. And then they call it resurrection or reconstruction of the field, which is a really, really nice term, kind of combining the ethnographic approach as well. But often a problem, and also with the Christchurch case actually, is that when you're a social scientist and you want to study something that is happening in society right now, you need to have some kind of research readiness. What actually Jukka Huhtamäki and others also talk about in their study. So they were actually in that Academy of Finland project kind of building those infrastructures and basically the data collection and the data extraction infrastructure specifically. And they were kind of like waiting for a terrorist attack to happen somewhere, which is a really kind of weird thing to do. But they that's what they wanted to study and kind of also test if it's possible to actually do it when something is going on in real time. So you need to have someone who kind of presses the button and starts the data collection. And this is another kind of infrastructure that you need to be able to do that. And I mean, even 24/7, basically. This picture is from our own study that was done in connection to elections, where we used something that we called big data augmented ethnography, where we at the same time did like ethnographic fieldwork across different social media sites, and then engaged in computational data collection. So that kind of the fieldwork was all the time sort of helping us to update whatever strategies and keywords and things we were collecting in the computational work that we were doing at the same time. And this was a great pipeline, but we know quite well when elections are coming, and we can prepare and we can kind of make sure that our calendars are empty for that. But if it's something else and something what happens like, I don't know, tomorrow somewhere in Finland, we really don't have much tools to kind of get that data. And maybe, I won't even get started with GDPR and all the privacy notices that you kind of should be doing if there is a terrorist attack in Finland, for example, but it's really hard to kind of prepare in advance for everything. Third point, all these infrastructures need quite a lot of care and maintenance. So they are not there on their own. And I think anyone here who has been working with any data probably knows this good old story that it's at least 60% of data scientists' time that is actually kind of wrangling and cleaning the data so that it actually can be analyzed and you can actually do those cool methods with that data. And this is kind of, inevitable part of the data, I would say. They come from different sources. They're quite messy. You have different fields in the data set. You typically don't need 90% of those fields, but someone might need. You need to kind of maybe combine the data. You might need to enrich it somehow. You might need to extract something from the textual content. So the tools that you kind of use to do this kind of work as well, it's really hard to do them so that they would actually work across all kinds of different data sets. And you often need some more technical kind of knowledge to actually make that happen. Some more accessible tools that I could have actually mentioned here as well is something that is called OpenRefine. I don't know if that's familiar to, I'm pretty sure it's familiar to some people, which can kind of take you quite far, but maybe not all the way. So you all often need actually those technical people, and then the more kind of complex you get with your tools, you also actually start needing people who have not just the research method skills, but also admin skills. Meaning that, for example, that label studio that we're running on cPOTA, I have no skills to be like an IT admin and actually run my own server somewhere, not even on CSC servers, even though they have pretty good guidelines. So I'm really happy that we do have a proper computer scientist who knows how to make that work. But that's pretty rare, that you actually need to have a people who knows how to set up a server and also what to do when the server falls down and you have a glitch somewhere and you need to fix it. So there's a lot of repair work and a lot of maintenance and a lot of kind of just software updates and everything going on with these tools all the time. And now I'm quoting my dear colleague Minttu Tikka, we were just having a chat earlier this week, and she used the term Tamagotchi to refer to all these tools that we tend to kind of develop in these projects. We actually have quite a lot of really nice tools that have been built here and there in different projects. We have Python libraries, we have existing like easy to use tools like the whole Digital Methods Initiative toolkit. But often it's really, really unclear what will happen to these in the future. Who will actually take care of that Tamagotchi and feed it and kind of make sure that it actually stays alive? And the DMI institution, or I don't know what it is actually officially, but the initiative, they're based at the University of Amsterdam, and they have pretty good visibility, and they do a lot of great stuff with something what they call natively digital methods. They have this really great database of like tens of different tools that you can use for different kinds of social media services and other online platforms. But they have basically no institutional support to actually run these and build these tools. So some of them are running on like one of the professor's home computer, like old server that he's running at his home in Portugal. And that's a bit crazy. And well, here again, I think we're quite happy to be in Finland, where we do have some national infrastructure that actually supports this kind of work. But many of the great initiatives there are done with really, really small resources and quite limited institutional support as well. I'm checking the time. One more kind of resource and collection and the wiki that I would like to advertise here as well is something that is called Toolkit for Digital Methods. This is something that we set up in the Faculty of Social Sciences, or in the program of Politics and Communication, actually, with the Digiloikka money, whatever you call that in English. But we got like separate funding to actually build this wiki site, where we have been collecting all kinds of tools that you can use to do digital research. It's about social media research, but also kind of different tools to work with news media data, for example, all kinds of methods, you name it. And it's a wiki. So if you find a mistake there, or if you find that something is missing, please update it. You can use your Haka login, and like anyone in this room should be able to kind of do it. And it would be really great if that could be a collaborative effort. Because I have to say, this is also one of those Tamagotchis that really doesn't have any proper resources or kind of infrastructures that would actually keep this running. But we do our best with this little one. And this is maybe something that we should always keep in mind as well when we talk about infrastructures and their care and maintenance. Infrastructures are not only about technology, but they are also about people. And I would also have references to cite on this note. And that's something that we tend to sometimes forget. And I think we have like really great these historical projects. I know there are many people here from the Heldik community, and now we have the HESSU, HSSH. These are the University of Helsinki examples. Really great projects that have been running with the Profi funding for around 6 years. And then when the funding ends, what happens? In this case, I mean, many of the things that were done in Heldik kind of were transferred to HESSU in one way or another. But still, this is something that really makes me quite sad, that there's a lot of great stuff going on for 6 years, and then, because if you don't have the people, then how do you keep those great things alive? Not just the technology, but also the human infrastructure. Because these are also about know-how and about sharing the skills and sharing the knowledge and all that. So this is something that we should probably talk to the rectors or somewhere even higher about how to make these things more long-term. That's a huge question. And I mean, again, we do have examples like the Language Bank of Finland, which is a bit more permanent structure, but still some similar kind of struggles with the funding as far as I know. So this is definitely a problem that is not solved. So yeah, this is actually the template that we were using in the Rajapinta workshop, kind of exactly keeping in mind this thing that when we go through the process of collecting and analyzing the data, we need to think about the infrastructure on at least 3 levels. We have the hardware, maybe the servers somewhere. We have the software, maybe the code, maybe it's a tool, but then we also have the people and skills. And I think it's really relevant to also learn how to recognize that, like what are the skills and people that we need to make all of this possible. And maybe there should be some kind of an arrow even from the people to the hardware, because those servers don't exist either unless we have those people, nor do those LLMs. So that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind. But yeah, maybe I would like to end with this note, quoting our own paper, and also some Swedish and Dutch colleagues actually. But also keep in mind that it's not insignificant what we have as infrastructures and what kind of decisions we make when we build those. Because as we do this computational analysis, as we do the annotations, whatever happens there, it's kind of heavily affecting also the entire research process. So what we are claiming, and here related to sentiment analysis actually in the with Emily Öhman and Juho Pääkkönen in our paper, that we're actually kind of engaging in a performative process where we are also constructing the measurements together with the tools that we are using when we do that. So this is why we should really, really think about the infrastructures, because if we build something that it then becomes kind of heavily used across the field and in different kinds of projects, then we end up kind of producing that kind of social imaginary and that kind of methodological imagination, which is supported by that particular tool. So this is kind of the endless problem that we have to struggle with, the flexibility of the tools that we have, but also their usability, how to kind of make them as useful as possible for all of us. Yep, but I can leave these here, but thank you so much. Happy to talk more today.